Welcome to Chalk Talk, a weekly preview of West Tennessee football featuring the Jackson Sun sports team on JacksonSun.com.
Hi everybody, welcome to Chalk Talk here at JacksonSun.com. It's week 3 of the high school football season. Handful of games we're going to talk about. We'll start, I guess, right here with one of the city teams that maybe has looked the best out of all the teams in the city, so far, just in the first couple weeks. Liberty takes a trip up to traditional powerhouse Milan. I'll be at that game. So as far as Liberty and Milan go, what should I be looking for?
Well, as far as the games in Jackson, or the teams in Jackson, yeah, Liberty is hands down the best looking team so far. Going in, you saw them last week, Craig. So as far as Liberty goes, you know what to look for: tough defense. I think they're as far as points allowed, they're the top defense in the area. Probably in all West Tennessee, having given up 3 points in 2 games. Also, when you consider the fact that those 2 opponents that they've allowed 3 points on are Northside and Henry County, a couple of teams who won a few games the last few years, and will probably continue to win games again this year. That makes that 3 points look even more impressive. Milan's coming in. They lost that first game against Peabody. They probably feel like they should have won, and they were leading until the last minute. Come back and get the big win over Humboldt last week, looking probably the way that Milan should look. Milan's offense will probably be a decent test for Liberty. They'll probably be better than decent. They will be a good test for Liberty, just with the experience that they bring in, the size that they bring in. Jacob Rimmer is 6'7", 260 pounds, I believe, on the offensive line. And the rest of the guys are not his size, but they're still all pretty good size linemen. That'll be a good test for Liberty, but they're probably used to that after playing Northside and Henry County. But it's just going to be a good game between 2 teams. One is a traditional power, the other one has been a power for the last few years, but this is the first time we actually get to see them match up and see definitely who is better.
Trenton Peabody has a huge game this week over in Trenton. It's defending 2A state champion, taking on defending 1A state champion Union City. He's won 29 games in a row. Golden Tornadoes trying to make it 30. What specifically can Peabody do to make sure that doesn't happen?
Keep the ball in their hands. Don't let Union City have the ball. Obviously, that means they can't make mistakes while on offense. As far as personnel, I mean, it's going to start now with Kendrick Malone. He's the one that we talked about 2 weeks ago. He took over against Milan in the second half. I don't know, out of the total percentage of carries for everybody in the second half for Peabody, he probably had 98% of them because he wasn't cramping and there wasn't a lot of, just nobody was as dependable as he was. But they've also just kind of make sure defensively that Union City, we know that they're going to, in all seriousness, they're probably going to run about 5 plays, if that many. They just run them so well and they execute so well. Everybody does their job so well that it's hard to stop them. Or at least that's been the case for the last 2 years. Nobody's been able to stop them since McKenzie did it week 1 of 2013. And that includes Peabody. They were the team that gave them the best game last year. And I use that term in very loosely because it was still a 26-point game. Yeah. But they still came away feeling like they had their chances. But they can't make mistakes, and they've got to make sure that Union City can't continue to just pound the ball and pound the ball and pound the ball. They got to get stops and keep them out of the end zone, obviously.
Yeah, I guess that's one thing about running a small number of plays. You're going to get them down pretty well. Everybody's going to know their job. Hardin County is hosting a big game. They're hosting. Lexington, right? Yeah. Hardin County, Lexington. A couple teams were off the first week. Had big wins this past week. What's kind of the key there? Michael Odom will be heading down there. What do you want him to look for?
Well, Liberty, Henry County, Hardin County.
We'll get it straight in a second.
Yes, sorry. Hardin County. A lot of the talk has been about Cal Goblin, Nick Godwin, that offense, and everything they've got coming back. But the linebacking core is a pretty good group of linebackers they got coming back. There's a lot of speed there. It's pretty good experience coming back because they were a young group last year. For the most part, lost a couple of key players, but Tyree Bumpus is back. He's the main guy there. And then they're going to be taking on that strong running game from Lexington. Tylen Johnson, he's a good quarterback, really good ball carrier from the quarterback position. Tre'Kius Tisdale gets all the publicity for the defensive side of the ball and being an Ole Miss commit for linebacker, and he could have been, or he was recruited as a defensive lineman. But he's a pretty good fullback too. Huge fullback that's hard to bring down. So they're going to have to be ready. All those linebackers are going to have to be ready for those two and the committee of running backs that they have. From what I heard, Lexington planned to throw the ball more than what they did against Riverside last week. I think they only threw 4 passes. They planned to throw it more, maybe 5 or 6. But in all seriousness, I think they planned to throw it maybe 10, 15 times. They only threw it 4 times because the running game is working so well. If Hardin County can keep that from happening, this may turn out to be a very compelling game to watch it unfold as the night wears on.
Okay. Trinity Christian Academy was in the state semifinals a couple years ago. They've made some good runs in recent years. Adamsville's been the last couple of years. Right now, for where those teams are, that probably looks pretty far away. Honestly, that's a very distant goal. Right now, it's just trying to sort of get back on track for both of those schools. Do you have a sense, Brandon, at this point, whether Trinity Christian or Adamsville's maybe a little bit ahead of the other?
Ahead of the other, I would say that probably Adamsville is. Now, granted, they're both not feeling great right now. Adamsville's coming off the loss, first time that they had the clock running on since the 2013 championship game against Friendship Christian, or 2012 championship game. The TCA 0-2 coming into this game, first time they started off 0-2, I think, since 2011, which was Kyle Lakin's freshman year. Blake Butler's first year as the head coach. But they play 2 good teams, though, St. George's and USJ. But Andrew Goldsmith is the guy that Adamsville's going to have to try to stop. It's been well documented already that how Andrew Goldsmith goes, TCA will go as well. I saw that firsthand Friday night at USJ. They had 21 points. He accounted for 14 of them between 2 touchdowns. One was a fumble return, 50 yards for a touchdown. Another one was a 10-yard run that was set up by an interception. And then he also ran in a 2-point conversion. So he's going to be kind of the catalyst, the hinge, that kind of the door TCA swings on. And so Adams is going to be trying to take that hinge out, essentially, to kind of keep going with that metaphor. But Adamsville, their offensive line, we've kind of talked about that, about how that's a big red wall that's going to be hard to get around for the defensive line from any team, but particularly TCA. Apparently Hardin County broke through it pretty well last week. Those young athletes in the back, though, they're going to have to grow up a lot, and this game will be a good chance for them to do that.
Yeah, games like that, you do tend to grow up usually if you handle it the right way.
Right.
So there's 4 big games to watch, obviously plenty more. If you want to go out and see a good game, you got plenty of options. On Friday morning, make sure you get the Jackson Sun. We've got the Blitz and the stats for the schools to call in. The Blitz are going to be preview capsules of all the games involving teams in the Jackson Sun's coverage area. Brandon, you want to tease any coverage here later in the week that people ought to look forward to?
We'll have previews of the Liberty Milan. The games we just talked about, we'll have previews for those games. Also, we'll have a profile on Southside quarterback Cade Willingham.
Who's had a very good start to the season.
Yes, very good start to the season. The Hawks are 2-0, and last year they didn't even win that many games last year. Went 1-9. So, but he kind of helped get all this started as soon as they got home from their final game last year, and we kind of talked about that. I think it'll be a good read.
All right, so that should be pretty cool. If you're at the games, hope to see you there. You can follow us on Twitter, JS Editor Brandon, JS Writer Michael, JS Writer Craig. But aside from that, hope you have a great week, and we'll talk again next week.
See you.